Hello everybody, my name is John Daniel, and today I will be going over a little bit of an animation for y'all, specifically an animation regarding 3D lighting. Now then, this will be of course on Adobe After Effects. This is version 25, and I'll go ahead and get started. So, of course, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have Adobe After Effects and open up the program to where you can see something like this. If you don't see something like this, that's fine. You might also be seeing like the actual main menu itself, which you gotta just click on New Project. Then from there, you should be onto this screen. From here, you're going to want to click on New Composition, and this little pop-up window is going to, of course, pop up. Now, the name doesn't really matter. You can name whatever it is exactly that you're trying to get hold of. I highly suggest that you name it something that is going to be really recognizable once you actually start getting this animation, because that's the name it's going to go into once you export this. Now that for the sakes of this practice, I'm going to go ahead and put down just 3D lighting. From here, I'm going to keep the same settings that I have up here, which is a HD 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second, with an aspect ratio of 16:9 square pixels. All this pretty much is going to be the same. Black background color is what I'm going to stick with, just so I can make sure I could have something pretty solid, so I could see the solids, the shapes, the letters, and so forth I will be using for this demonstration. One thing I do want to note is, of course, the duration. Now, for this sake, I'm just going to stick with 10 seconds, that way I don't have anything too long or too short. That way it could show a bit of a mixture of what it is that can be shown. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Now, from here, you're going to just see a big old black screen, and that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what we're going to go in for. From right here in this area, you're going to want to click, right-click, hover over New, and click on Solid. Now it's going to bring up this window called Solid Settings. The name, you can name it for however you want. For this case, I'm going to just call it the Gray Solid, because the color I'm going to go with is just gray, because that's the background that I have right now. This doesn't really matter for this practice. You could have it whatever color you're trying to reach for, but for this, I'm going to stick with gray. And I should have a gray background like this. Now then, just so I make sure I'm not accidentally moving the background too much, I'm going to go ahead and just lock it in place. Now then, once we have this gray background opened up, and of course everything is locked, I'm going to go ahead and click on the shape tool, or the rectangle tool that's up here in the top area. Now, I'm going to just stick with the rectangle. You could choose whatever shape exactly you're trying to reach to, and once you get the shape that you're trying to desire, just go ahead and build your shape. Now, once again, the settings here don't really matter. This is just for an example purposes. Right now, I have it as red, so I can make it more of a distinguishing color compared to the background. I don't have any borders because they're not necessary for this experiment. From here, I'm also gonna... Actually, no, I'm not gonna lock them. I forgot there's one step I need to do before I could do that. That being making this project into 3D. Since right now it is actually currently in 2D, which is what we're seeing here. To make it this into 3D, there's going to be some settings and boxes over here that I want you to go ahead and focus on. There are some interesting colors here that, of course, if you hover, you're going to be seeing a few things. Due to the size of my mouse, you're not going to be able to see it very well with all of them, but there is a third option right here which says 3D layer, which allows this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions. That's what it says. So go ahead and check off this box and this box. And now we have it to where this whole project is in 3D. Now from here, we're going to move on to this little corner of the project view, where we actually see the select view layout. Right now I'm in view, or one view, which shows me one of the axes where I can see it. For this instance, I am seeing it from the very front. So if I go ahead and click on this, it will show me different types of views that I can see this. I could either see this in 2 views, or I could see this in 4 views. Now, you can manipulate these all you want, but for this example, I'm going to stick with 2 views. I do not believe I'm actually going to need all 4. And it may seem a little confusing at first, but this window is the top view of the project. In this case, instead of looking at it from the very front, we're simply looking at it from the top-down view. This here being our background, and one of these here in the very stuck in the middle, if you will, is our red square. Now, as you can see, we have some arrows here. These arrows determine whether or not our shape will be moving across the X, Y, and Z coordinates. Specifically right here, we have different orientations and rotations. So just so that way we can make sure that this can be more of a 3D viewing, we're gonna grab, as soon as I click on the select tool, which is V, we're gonna make sure that our shape layer is selected and drag on the Z coordinate, or the blue arrow. And we don't need to push it that far forward, just enough to where there's an obvious difference between the gray layer and our red box. Now from here, we don't really need it, I don't really need it very far, so I just need to go ahead and lock it in place. Now then, next up, I'm going to go ahead and right click in the same layers area. I'm going to hover over new, and I'm going to click on light. Now we're going to go ahead and get the light settings. Again, you get the option of renaming this. I'm just going to stick with Spotlight 1, and it gives you a couple of different types of settings here. Now you could go ahead and change the light type to ambient, point, spot, or parallel. This example, I'm going to stick with spot. The color can be changed. I have it as a pale yellow. I have intensity of 100 with a cone angle of 90 with a cone feather of 50. No fallout. Radius and fallout distance won't be changed here. I have cast shadows selected with a check mark. Shadow darkness at 100% and shadow diffusion at 0 pixels. This is my settings. You can mess with these all you want, and it will give you different types of results depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So these are my settings for right now, and I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Immediately, we should be seeing a bit of an example. Now, it may not show it very well, but the red box actually changed a shade different. Let me go ahead and turn off or toggle off the viewing of the spotlight, so that way y'all could see it better. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one. There you go. See, there's an ever so slightly change in the red box color or shade. Now, as we can see, it's only affecting the red box. What about the background? Well, that's just a simple fix. All we gotta do is go into our gray layer, which I just realized is not in 3D for some reason. Okay, there we go. So normally, I should have had this on a 3D layer, but for this sake, I'm gonna go ahead and show you if something is not showing a shadow or being affected by the light itself. If you go on the layer, hit the drop down arrow, it will give you a couple of options, such as transform geometry options and material options. If you open up material options, you'll see the first one being cast shadows. Now, cast shadows will be either on or off. This one will only just be if it will cast a shadow on the very background. Of course, the 3D layer is going to help be manipulated by the light itself. Now, we're actually going to use that cast shadows on our shape layer. And now, with it cast on, you could barely see it, if any. We now see a tiny slither, what looks like a border, on our shape. And here is where we get to manipulate the light to give it more of a 3D effect, especially when it comes to animation. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this little drop-down window for the spotlight. You'll see in a moment. Go ahead and open up transform. Again, you'll see in a moment. And I'm going to select spotlight. So that way we could see all of the cones, if you will, and how it works. So I'm going to point out a couple of different things. For one thing, of course, we do have the same X, Y, and Z rotation, orientation, and of course where the placement of the light will be shown in the sense of its placement. Its source, or where specifically it's directing, is this little point, this little dot here, which is another reason why we have two views here. Here, you could place it to where this dot can be pointing in any of the places that you want it to point to. For this sake, I'm going to leave it here. Here, on this side, will allow you to focus the light at a different target. And now, here's where things are going to get a little weird. As mentioned beforehand, we have the X, Y, and Z coordinates. There is a tiny dot right here, the very center, that is the same color as the outline of the cone. You can even see it here on view 2. If you click on this, you will move the whole spotlight. And now this may not be something that you exactly are trying to achieve, unless of course you're trying to give it more of a passing light effect. But for this example, we are actually not giving a passing light, we are simply moving the spotlight but having it face the object. So in this case, we have to grab hold of the cone itself. There we go. It takes a minute, and here we go. As you can see, I am grabbing the cone, and its fixed point where it's supposed to be facing will constantly look at the shape. And as you can see, the shadow has changed, and the shade on the red, the shape, is of course being affected. Now, I'm going to go ahead and of course create the animation. Here, we see a couple of things: the point of interest and the position. The point of interest will be kept locked. Again, I will not be moving this, nor will I be using the XYZ coordinates to be moved. So with that said, I will go ahead and begin the process of creating a different angular light change. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with clicking on the stopwatch here. This will create a keyframe right here along the timeline. Now, say I was to move this here dial points to halfway through, and I was to move the spotlights area to move here. Then a second keyframe will be created once I have moved this. And of course, if I was to move this back and begin playing this animation, it's going to appear a little laggy because it's still slowly building up the animation to be a lot more in smoother transition. It has to render the effect. But once it's finishing rendering, which you can tell by this green line here, if it's black it has not rendered, if it's red it means it hasn't properly rendered a certain thing. Right now you're not going to see anything because I haven't made anything here, but once we reach back, it'll slowly begin to move the lights in a bit more of a smoother transition. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and move the spotlights to be a little closer and a little bit on this area from this point of view. But on this point of view, it's going to be a little closer. So I'm going to go ahead and move the cone to be right around here on this view. And on this view, I'm going to drag it to be closer. Right around there. That way, the animation will look a little something like this as soon as I can get the thing to render. Now I have shown you how to create a 3D object, or at least a 3D viewing point for your shapes to be manipulated to have more of depth into it, while also showing you the different viewings with a light. Now then, you could manipulate the light, the shapes, and everything else to however it is you want it. For instance, if I was to go ahead and unlock the shape, select it once again, and push the shape more forward, you can gain different effects, like so, where while I have it here, the shape now casts a much larger shadow, whereas if I push it back to the gray plane, it'll create once again a smaller shadow. Now that we got this going, I can now begin the exporting process of this small little animation I have. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to File, which is up here on the right, up in the top left corner. I'm going to go over to Exports and add to Render Queue. And here, of course, we're going to get a couple of different things. For instance, we're going to get the render settings, which of course you can customize to any ways that you have. For this project or example, though, I'm going to stick with the settings I already have here. And then the output module. So here is your output module settings. Again, this allows you to manipulate certain different things, such as how the video comes out, different types of formats, the way or the type it will be. Wait, no, that would be the one. Basically, just a couple of these settings that the thing will have on its own. You can also manipulate the audio in case you decide to throw audio in there. And the color, you don't want to mess with the color, but we're not going to mess with that right now. And finally, the way or the place where it is supposed to go. So for this example, of course, I have my drive opened, so I could have it saved to wherever exactly I want it to be. And of course, I could rename it. And if you're given the options, you can also change the type. Of course, you do that over on the output module on different types of the beginning part. And once you find the location that you want it to be, in this case I'll just have it just saved in my very beginning part of my drive, just go ahead and click save. Once there, you want to go ahead and click on render. And now with all of that rendered, you can now simply just view your animation project. Again, you can edit this however it is you like in whatever type of style you want. And with that done, have a good day, everyone.